to episode 4, would you believe? For those joining us for the first time, welcome along. This is episode 4, so that means there's another 3 episodes that you have missed. So you can find them on YouTube, on Sorted Stone, if you'd like to catch up on the previous episodes of what's been happening. But this is Gabe and I with you today to present on another awesome feature from the platform called the HubSpot Growth Suite.
Yes, on Playbooks today, Tony, of all things. We're going to have a bit of a play with Playbooks today. And if you're an avid watcher, you will know that we will be going into the HubSpot platform itself and demonstrating the tool. So stick around for that, but Tony is going to kick off with a little bit of context and backstory on Playbooks, what they do, and how great they are. So
exactly, yeah, it's called Setting the Scene. And we are going to set the scene for that awesome thing called Playbooks that we talked about before that's going to be coming up. Mm-hmm. So in terms of the people that are going to be on the series, just a quick intro. You've met Gabe here, you've met myself, Tony Eads. Michael Peach joins us from time to time. He's live from Perth in Western Australia, which is our solutions team office. And also heading up with him, we had him on the last episode, was Matthew Reed, who will also be joining us from time to time, plus other speakers as we continue this whole series. So Playbooks, what is Playbooks? What is it all about? Well, basically a playbook is a collection of tactics or methods that a personal team relies on to do their job. It obviously gives a fantastic way for you to use methods and tactics across your whole team. With the Playbooks tool built into your HubSpot platform, you can provide guidance and interactive content cards displayed across everything from the company contact to the deal to ticket records to a whole thing. So it's really, really important nowadays to have that systemization across your whole sales team to get the maximum effect out of everything. It's kind of like having your sales team all singing, if they're singing in chorus, from the same song sheet. Your sales playbook can enable your team to describe your product and solutions that it provides. So you can have a uniformed brand presence, if you like, of how you're going to describe products and services uniformly across the whole sales team. You can explain the benefits of your product. So again, make it super easy for your sales team to lock into those key benefits when they're on a sales call, whether that be an intro call, advisory call, or whatever. You can present a product demonstration in a uniformed way. Just by following the playbook, respond to common objections and structure the agenda for each of your sales call, which is always important to follow a set process we often do here at Sorted Stone for whether it's an intro call, exploratory call, or an advisory call, which is the way HubSpot kind of defines the sales process, thanks to the wonderful Dan Tyre. You can actually follow that process and actually build that into your playbook.
Thanks, Dan Tyre.
Thanks, Dan. So why do you need a sales playbook? Well, this is an interesting one. Of course, we live in a completely new world now, post-pandemic, and of course, remote sales stats show us, as you can see here in this sales modeling, that 50% generally of businesses in terms of their sales teams are working in a hybrid model. Similar to us, we're doing that. We're normally 2 or 3 days in the office or 2 or 3 days working remotely from home. In person, everyone getting back into the office is only about 30% at the moment. And 18% is fully remote. So there's definitely this trend and desire to be hybrid, which makes these sales playbooks so important because, you know, while you're in an office environment, it's easy to bounce ideas off people or to feel like you're selling the brand or promoting your product and service in a uniformed way. But when you're in isolation, as it were, working from home, having a playbook can really help you continue to deliver in the same methodology. The new sales world, what does that all mean? I mean, we're all living it, breathing it at the moment, but these are some interesting stats I found before today's episode. 7 decision makers, they reckon on average, are involved in the B2B buying process, which makes sense.
Wow.
So how many times are you going to do a call or a presentation to get to that decision maker that's the one that finally signs the check? 50 to 90% again of the journey is complete before a buyer interacts with a sales rep. We've known this for a while that our kind of buyers are more informed than ever before. They've got Google at their fingertips. They can do all the research that they want before they even reach out to a salesperson. So it just means that you've just got to be just that little bit more on your feet. And more than 50% of prospects want to see how your product works on the first call, would you believe? This was an interesting stat for me. So normally we practice the intro call where you're just finding out what are the pain points of a particular customer and why are they coming to talk to you. But to actually demo your product or talk about your product or weave that into your talk is an interesting one. When 50% of the products want to kind of get straight to the guts of it all and find out what your product does before you've really had time to investigate why they're actually talking to you. I think as well, the sales team themselves love it, and this is an important part because any sales CRM only works if it gets adopted by the sales team. The HubSpot sales CRM that we use within our organization is obviously what we love about it is it's designed for the salesperson first. A lot of times sales CRMs are designed for the business reporting and mechanisms and the sales manager to kind of oversee everything, but HubSpot Sales CRM is really thought about how useful it is or easy to use for the salesperson first and foremost. You can obviously use things like tracking, smart data, sequences, workflows. We might see some of that when Gabe's presentation later on, which takes away a lot of that time-consuming data entry that salespeople hate, including me. I'm often told that I need to be using the HubSpot Sales CRM far more than I do. But when it's used properly, it's just absolutely powerful. It's a one complete system, so it gives you all of those insights from the marketing team right across that buyer journey, which is important. So, you know, the sales team that really utilize the sales CRM properly are going to see all of this wonderful data of traction of how people have actually come through to that demo call or that intro call that you might be doing. So important stuff. A case study just to share with you before we get started. One of our clients out of Queensland in Brisbane approached us with a problem. As most clients kind of come to you, can you solve my problem? Theirs was around their team had grown considerably. They were on a big growth trajectory, and a lot of their systems just didn't communicate effectively. Neither did their team, so it was creating this internal conflict. So we actually worked across all of their teams, which was interesting. We worked with their sales team, their marketing team, and their service team, just to unify them together using the power of HubSpot. Some of the pain points that they brought up was a need to replace their old systems. They were using things like Zendesk and MailChimp and a lot of these disparate systems that people use that aren't connected, aren't talking to each other. So they wanted to try and get a robust kind of bespoke setup of everything talking to each other. They wanted to align their teams, which is always a big one, is your marketing team talking to your sales team, to your service team, so they're not working in silos, and have a system that kind of brings everybody centrally together on the one platform. And then all importantly, they wanted team metrics reporting. They wanted to be able to see, rather than an ad hoc reporting system, they wanted to be able to see overall, you know, how their performance was going, either individually by drilling down into the team or overall as a kind of business performance. So we did a lot of team alignment, a lot of training with them, a lot of bringing them together, fully mapping out the buyer journey, which is always an important first step, is understanding how that buyer journey should go, because the buyer journey is the thing that connects everybody, right? If you do the end-to-end buyer journey, it's going to connect your marketing team with the context of how they need to perform to give the right information to the sales team, and then the sales team know in the buyer journey what their role is to actually end up delivering correctly the product and service that then ends up being taken over by the service team. We also fully mapped out the onboarding and implementation processes with the service team. So whatever we were setting up to sell, we were setting up for success. So the actual service team knew how to deliver and onboard new customers as they came through. And then finally, ongoing and once-off training was all applied to each team, so they all were completely familiar with the platform that they were using, because if they're not using it properly, then it's not going to deliver the actual visibility that we want, which was the main thing, to get this overall visibility across the marketing, sales and service team respectively as one complete system. Sometimes what we like to call the revenue team, because everybody's focused on, you know, getting new leads and converting those leads and servicing those leads for the ultimate best revenue and experience, I suppose, for the actual business. So the results, we had a complete funnel entry across different points of the marketing and sales team, powered by HubSpot with various assets and tools and automation. The onboarding and implementation I mentioned before was successfully rolled out with the service team especially. We also had the respective teams fully trained from marketing to sales. The bespoke reporting then was able to be built up and delivered, which gave that full visibility by having dashboards that were real-time data showing the team and each team and their managers on how things were performing. And we began that transition from Zendesk across to HubSpot's knowledge base. So a big success there, and of course the playbook played an important part in that, because it enabled the sales team to really understand prospects as they came through the funnel, so they could put them into this kind of grid format where you could instantly know which ones were to be contacted immediately, those that were interested in a good fit. Those that were not interested but still a good fit went into the nurturing process, so they were handled by marketing but still visible to the sales team. We removed prospects that were a bad fit and non-interested, so we didn't clutter up the data. And then nurturing prospects that were interested and possibly a bad fit right now, but potentially could be a good fit in the future. So sales playbooks is what it's all about. We're going to learn how a sales team can use a playbook to actually achieve some of the stuff I was sharing with you. So let me hand over to Gabe, who is going to take us through HubSpot sales playbooks.
100%. Thanks for that very grandiose intro there, Tony.
Yes.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
A lot of pressure. But no, I think a lot of those slides, can I just talk to those real quick in terms of like the overall good fit to bad fit ratio, the one you showed at the end. I think it's a pretty good sum up of how playbooks, when they come into your buyer cycle, how you could actually start leveraging the data from using playbooks. So obviously, playbooks is built in with your CRM. Therefore, your single customer view when using playbooks is going to include all the data that you enter into there. So then, therefore, the reporting from that could be more accurate.
Yeah.
And it really makes sense from even a lead scoring perspective when we talk about those tools in HubSpot later on. Matching a good fit to a bad fit, you can actually use playbooks to help with that process. So say you complete an initial playbook and all the boxes are ticked, using lead scoring to then further the score of that lead to then move them to a sales rep is a great use of like triaging between marketing to sales, which a lot of people I think forget about, is the fact that marketing, especially in the inbound methodology, ties directly into that SQL stage, the sales stage. So as many of you know, the inbound methodology dictates that you have awareness to consideration to decision, and that consideration phase is like one of the most precarious, critical points, because you've got MQLs who have moved from all this self-nurturing, self-educating stage as an MQL, marketing qualified lead, to a sales qualified lead, an SQL. And it's that triaging, that bridging part which I'm talking about, whereas playbooks is where playbooks could come into it. I'm getting all my words mixed up. But anyway, that's what I just wanted to sort of tie in with that last slide, because I thought it was quite relevant.
It's good. And the big point that you made there, I think, that I got out of it, is the word qualified, right? If it's done properly, you're qualifying the lead right the way through the whole process, from a very first prospect through the lead process, marketing. So by the time they get to sales, they should be qualified enough for the sales team to take over.
Yeah, that was like one of your earlier slides where it showed like most people are 70 to 90% ready, right? Before they even talk to somebody on the phone or via email, right? That final 10% is where playbooks really come into play to get them across the line quicker, and your sales reps just have to do less, which is great. That's what all sales reps, I'm sure, wish they could do.
Well, me included.
In particular, Tony. So I wanted to just cover off real quick, if we have a look at my screen share for a sec. In terms of HubSpot, because a lot of people ask me, like, what sales hub would I need to, have playbooks, and where would I start? Well, playbooks comes into, as you can see, the sales hub. That is the hub attached to your CRM. And you would have your starter there, obviously, but then if you wanted to get your playbooks, and you can go to this link here and we can send it later, playbooks is under the professional level of Sales Hub. So you will need to sort of step up your game and go into playbooks at the professional level if you want to start using those tools. But then anything onwards and whatnot will include playbooks as well. And I believe there's just more automation, more complexity you can build in at the enterprise level too. But definitely at the professional level is where you would need to start to have playbooks. So, playbooks, whether those exist, well, let's have a look at this sketchy character here, Gabe McCarthy, in our CRM. So this is our Salted Stone CRM, and I'm just looking at my details here. And you can see here, this is the single customer view. Obviously, the right side is all the details you would need to know about this particular contact, so what stage they're at, what's their contact details, their name, etc., etc. In the middle, you've got all the activity that will be happening, in your day-to-day. So if this is an internal view on somebody in terms of like a sales rep, you could see all their activity, like you can see mine. But if it were a prospect or a lead or a customer, you could see in there all the detail around the activity, like how they'd be coordinating between communication, updates, integration, stuff like that, all little bits of touch points here and there. You could have it all measured and calculated through this activity feed. But where we're going to focus on today is actually the right side here, where you can see all the associations. So you have all your regular setup associations when you set up on professional level for Sales Hub. Obviously the company tied in Salted Stone with the contact property. You've got deals, so any deals aligned with that particular contact, and these will be reflected on both the contact and company level. So you can see from a sales rep perspective, if somebody is dealing with a deal with one person from one company versus a sales rep dealing with another deal with another person, you'll see it all centralized here, so there's no crossover of wires. But where we're going to zoom down to is here around playbooks, and this is again also customizable in terms of where you can position it. I believe we just have it positioned here for our own sake, but just for sake of like showing you, you can actually drag and drop it into any location here. If I wanted to put it right underneath deals, I could. And then you drop down and you can see all the available playbooks that are the most commonly used in your system. So we have quite a few, as you can see. We can move between different pages and see like the abundance of playbooks we have. But just for the sake of how it's presented in your CRM to begin with, you'll have most likely the most common playbooks that are used pop up first and foremost. And then you can go into the individual playbooks directly from the single customer view. So you don't actually have to go anywhere else. You can stay in the single customer view, which is one of the huge user experience benefits of having HubSpot. Everything is nice and neatly packed into one consolidated space. But say for sake of argument, you wanted to manage your playbooks. Well, I've just clicked open here in another tab where I can show you very similarly to how a lot of other tools are set up. It's a basic foldering system, which most people, if you're using digital SaaS-based software these days, you're very used to. You can set up new folders. For the sake of this, I'll just go test, and then once you've done so, you'll have a folder sitting right there, and you can start creating your playbook straight from the big orange button in the far right. And it'll give you this builder here, so you can start from scratch, or it'll give you suggestions as well, which is nice. I like this, that it has this discovery called playbook, because that's probably one of the most common things. I know we at Salted Stone do that a lot, is discovery calls. When we get an inquiry and find out if this particular lead would be a good fit for us and we'd be a good fit for them. So a discovery call playbook, it gives you straight out of the box, and then you can just go create playbook, and it will give you all the immediate fields that they would recommend. And of course you can update it and customize it however you want. But for the sake of a test today, let's make a test for under the hood and go create a playbook from scratch. And as you can see here, the builder is so simple and so common to all the other ones you've probably seen in HubSpot before, whether you're building an email, you're building like a survey or whatever it might be. The builders within HubSpot are usually very much the same, with slight variations here and there. But where you would begin is obviously you have the title to your playbook. You would write in whatever you want in terms of like the first questions and stuff you would use within your discovery phase, if this was a discovery phase of using this playbook, or whatever purpose the questions would have. And then you would have the editing section below where you can write in a question. You can make it open text, or you can have a list of answer options as well, or you can have it as an option to update a property, and that's a bit of a more complex level, so we won't go into that. But let's talk to open text and have it a question here like how was your day? Probably not the most pertinent question, but just for the sake of argument, adding that in. So you can see there it immediately pops it into your builder. And then you can start adding in more, or you can delete them and all of that. You can customize it just slightly with all these different varying things that you would use, but for the most part it's an internal tool, so I wouldn't worry about making it look too pretty. What's more important is that the questions and answers that you want to get within each playbook are pertinent to the stage that you're communicating with a contact. So as I talked before, if they are moving from like the MQL to SQL stage of inquiring about a particular service or product that you have, especially in the B2B space, having this discovery set out with the questions that would be most relevant to moving them further down the pipeline and then creating a deal from that, is probably the most relevant thing that you want to be doing. And then settings, you can have in here as like, is it going to be a call, a meeting, an email, or a note? And then you can select different types of calls. So it's an exploratory, a pitch call. This is just a HubSpot rep talking directly to someone who's phoned in, as an example. If you go meeting, you've got different options there. It's a pitch, etc. So you have all these different options here. What's cool is you have set here when to recommend is this little created rules section. So if you create this rule down here and say recommend this playbook when is in certain deal stage, you can say, all right, cool, and just makes it so that when you are entering people into your pipeline, you have to make sure this is a prerequisite to moving them across the pipeline, right? So if at that deal stage is any of, say, form submittal, right, for the NA, which is North America sales pipeline that we have, save that. Just means that whenever you are starting this conversation with somebody who's entered in this deal stage pipeline stage, I should say, then you have this pop up as the playbook that you need to answer in and answer the questions and tick all the boxes off before they can progress. So huge important thing to have as part of that, what Tony was talking about before that, making sure everyone's communicating on the same language and there's no like moving people across when they're not qualified and wasting your time and other people in your team's time. It's a huge benefit and a huge tool to have that, to make sure that this, this mandatory setting is already a prerequisite in your HubSpot.
So if I could just ask then, does this make it that you can have basically a different playbook at different levels of the journey,
100%.
right? A different deal stage?
Yeah, 100%. And obviously it might be overkill for some businesses, but definitely at the critical stages, like say the discovery call stage, it's a big one. At the further on exploratory stage where maybe you've gathered together with several stakeholders and your stakeholders all in one room, all in one call. And then you're having to answer those critical questions there to find out what the actual solution might be for them. That's another time where you'd have a playbook. And then maybe towards the very end when you're looking to sign off on the deal, what is it in terms of final detail that will get them across the line that you could have in the playbook? And those questions you could ask, certain questions you could ask is like, is there anything in this proposal you think is missing? And if they answer to that, you can type that in your playbook and then have that saved, and then that goes, to your team, and then you work from those answers, and then you develop out your proposal from those answers to be more, attuned to what their desired result is, or not. If you just say, we can't do that, basically, you can always feel free to say that, and that's just a really good mark too of determining who's a good fit. So to give you an example then of using playbooks, if I go back to my single customer view, as you can see here, we've got the intro call playbook. If I just click on that, as you can see here, as I mentioned before, it all opens up in front of you in your single customer view, so you don't have to jump between different parts of HubSpot. And then you can just immediately start logging the call. So if I log the call here, it'll log the call directly for the time and the place, and you can adjust these as well. You can even delete them and whatnot. But if I go back to this here, and then start basically answering these questions and whatnot, and you can set an outcomes like a connected or left a message or whatnot. You can do all these different little bits in here, but the main point is that you want to be basically, if you're on a Zoom, say you have this popped up in front of you, it's just a natural thing to go, okay, so let's review this and let's review that, and then by the time you're actually on the call, you start asking these questions. So you could be like, what tech stacks do you use? Do you use HubSpot, Salesforce, Pardot? So you can have, as we showed before, all these pre-fillable ones, so you don't have to type it in every time if you feel like you're having the same repetitive answers. You can have all these in, and that's an example of how advanced we have it set up. But you can always have as a free text field if you prefer, if there's just too many variables, which some people do, and then any notes to that. Once you're done with all that, like I showed you before, you would log the call, and it would save all that information, and that was what you would take away with your team to follow on the next stage of qualifying as a potential lead. So yeah, look, that's basically Playbooks in a nutshell, in terms of the tool itself, obviously there's more complexity to it. What I will cover off just quickly is then how that translates into dashboards and reporting, because then that's obviously what comes after the fact and whatnot. So in this dashboard example of this client here, you can see that they've got reports in their dashboard of deals created for their whole sales team, the MAU that was created within the deals, the deal in progress, all of that kind of stuff. But where is probably most pertinent towards the playbook stages here. So deals one details. So how many time moved to to move this person from all the way from their MQL to an actual customer. How much time did it take to move them across? This is all logged in with the amount of time spent logging in through Playbooks and whatnot, and it's connected through automation to log that time. Are they is the sales attribution a referral or is it an inbound and whatnot? Again, this is detail all sort of entered into the playbook stage. So at the exploratory call, you would ask, oh, where did you hear about us? Google. All right, cool. Maybe that's an inbound one. That's what we would classify as an inbound, as an example. Or it's like, oh, someone told me about you. Cool, that's a referral. So you would hit in the playbook a referral. Offline, paid search and whatnot. Those things can be also automatically added in through automation. So you might not need a playbook for that. And then have the OneNotes and stuff. So, have those entered into your playbook as well, and all various different types of information. So I won't bore you with all those details, but these are just some few examples there of then how these then pull into your reporting. And then month to month, you as a team can look at that and even filter down by the source type and say like, oh, we got a lot through referral, we've got a lot through inbound and whatnot. This is sort of then justifying how much time we need to spend bolstering up the inbound approach for sales versus the referral stage and whatnot. So yeah, I think that covers most of what I wanted to go through in Playbooks. There's probably a lot more we could go into, but I don't want to use up too much of the people's brain power and time. So I'm open to any.
Yeah, so a couple of questions for you. So in terms of, the process seems fairly straightforward. What about sales collateral? Right. So how easy is it for I'm a salesperson, I can go in here, I can log my intro call, but then I need access to things like if I want to show them a demo video or I want to send a capabilities deck or whatever like that. How does that, so does that all work within the playbook?
Yeah, so 100%. So then that would be more your sort of to the external point of contact. So if you have a playbook just for your internal workings and whatnot, you can have your then external playbooks that you can tie in with your system. So you would then have, say, a template playbook that is like, say, a capabilities deck connected in with Playbooks, and if you wanted to then slightly adjust it for the end user, so the person you send it to, maybe it's like right after the intro call and you just want to let them know these are all our capabilities so that you get the full context, but some of them that you discovered on the discovery call aren't relevant, you can just delete within that cloned out playbook in your system and then send them the most relevant one direct from your system.
Yeah, that's cool. Because one thing I do like is, obviously using HubSpot to send your documents. So things like a capabilities deck. So if you send it, rather than send it as an attachment to an email, if you send it within HubSpot, you can actually see when they've opened it, how long they've spent on each page, which is so important because you can see how engaged, I suppose, the prospect is after you've had the sales call.
Yeah, that's a good point. Thanks for bringing that up. I didn't mention that, obviously, because you have Playbooks tied in with your CRM and therefore to your contacts view, in that activity feed I showed you in the middle section, you can then see, to Tony's point, when they're opening it, how long they're spending in the playbook and whatnot. You can also do that with documents in HubSpot. So maybe we'll cover that as a separate point as well. Yeah. It's a less advanced tool, but it's definitely still got some similar capabilities.
Yeah. And I suppose if you are new to HubSpot, you're probably getting the idea that everything's interconnected. I mean, that's the beauty of HubSpot's overall growth suite, is that they're not independent platforms. They can work independently. You can start with just sales and just have a sales team working in HubSpot or a marketing team working in the marketing hub. But if you grab the whole growth suite, they're all interconnected together and talking to each other.
Yeah, 100%.
Cool. Well, thank you, Gabe, for that, for sharing that, and thanks for joining us on the episode 4 of our Under the Hood. This was Sales Playbooks coming your way. Next up, we're going to be looking at exciting one: data quality and data management. Because obviously everything with HubSpot is all data related, right? As Gabe was showing you, got the dashboard, but as they say, pour data in, pour data out. You're not going to you're not going to get fantastic results. So join us in the next episode when we talk about data quality and management. Michael Peach will be joining us live from our solutions team in our Perth office to take us through Operations Hub and how you can manage the quality of your data. But thanks for joining us for episode 4.
Take care, everyone.